500,000 dead. Guards pull the iron lever. The thick wooden trapdoor slams loudly. Frost coats the heavy hinges. They test the drop mechanism again. 6 in the morning, Krakow. That documented victim count equals the entire population of Nuremberg. The execution protocol activates. Montelupich Prison runs strictly on schedule. January 24, 1948. Maria Mandl waits inside her cell. The former head overseer listens. Officers check the rope tension. Guards sign the final execution paperwork. She steps out. No delays allowed. The state hangs the convicted overseer whose documented life started back in 1912.
How exactly does the personnel base for future SS concentration camps form? It materializes through the economic dead end of an Austrian province. On January 10, 1912, the village of Münzkirchen contained no infrastructure of state terror. The settlement offered only standard demographic parameters and strict economic constraints for its working-class residents. Dust drifted silently through the stale air inside the local shoe shop, where her father repaired boots for a meager income. The household maintained a highly traditional Catholic environment that provided rigid structure but zero upward mobility. Maria Mandl possessed completely standard starting characteristics. These baseline traits revealed absolutely no psychological anomalies during her remarkably ordinary early childhood. She completed her basic rural education at the age of 14, with completely average academic results. The local financial reality dictated that further schooling remained entirely impossible for a provincial cobbler's daughter. Without access to higher institutions, she faced a highly predictable trajectory defined by domestic labor and minimal wages. Seeking a reliable daily income source, she eventually secured employment by taking a mundane position as an assistant at the regional post office. 130,000 women behind barbed wire. The postal clerk vanished. By May 1939, she operated inside Ravensbrück. The installation sat 50 miles north of Berlin. It formed the primary detention hub for female prisoners. Its population surpassed Europe's massive Wembley Stadium. High-voltage fences enclosed the perimeter. Roll call commenced. Inmates stood frozen. Mandl stepped forward. She left the guard formation. A sharp crack echoed. The leather whip struck a coarse prisoner uniform. The human target moved too slowly. She utilized standard-issue batons. She used bare fists. Physical violence established her baseline operational efficiency. Cruelty to inmates was never a disciplinary breach. It constituted the explicit criterion for promotion. Camp directors monitored these metrics. Her brutality verified her administrative competence. The hierarchy demanded strict execution. Mandl delivered. Command noticed. Her rank elevated. She transitioned beyond basic sentry posts. She managed groups of subordinate guards. She directed extensive forced labor details. The SS apparatus rewarded her physical brutality with continuous hierarchical mobility, issuing direct reassignment orders to a vastly larger continental extermination complex. October 1942. How does a postal worker become a guard? By submitting a voluntary application to SS headquarters at age 26. The violence she later directed at prisoners was not an innate psychological trait. It was a calibrated procedure installed at Lichtenberg camp in October 1938. Lichtenberg, housed inside a 16th-century castle, was an early testing ground for female guard protocols. Before the mass expansion of the concentration camp network, SS instructors here perfected the desensitization process. They designed a specialized curriculum. Instructors erased civilian habits. Empathy vanished. Staff categorized inmates entirely as racial defectives and biological threats to the state apparatus. Commanders punished any display of compassion with immediate dismissal. The daily schedule prioritized physical domination, strict adherence to regulations, and operational detachment. Recruits learned to deploy batons according to standardized SS regulations. The administration measured success by the total absence of hesitation during physical punishment. Sympathy equated to treason. Mandl adapted rapidly.
She executed the racial doctrine without hesitation or error. Her physical force matched the exact specifications demanded by the command staff. She absorbed the hierarchical structure. The evaluation concluded. The Central SS Command formally appointed her to the active position of Aufseherin. In 1919, Austria was an isolated republic. By spring 1938, it became a massive personnel reserve for the Third Reich. Mandl's SS application required this exact macro-political shift. The Anschluss began in March 1938. German troops crossed. Thousands cheered. Hitler entered Vienna. The Treaty of Saint-Germain of 1919 caused this collapse. It stripped Austria of 60% of its pre-war territory. A huge economic vacuum opened. Unemployment spiked. Factions clashed. Extremism grew. The Nazis exploited this void. The state absorbed millions of citizens into a single administrative apparatus. The previously banned Nazi Party took full control. Austrians flooded into the new organizations. They matched the enthusiasm of German citizens. The integration solved local economic problems. It generated an immense demand for trained personnel across new state structures. Maria Mandl joined the party immediately after the annexation. The registry recorded membership number 6,297,769. The central administration assigned her a specific slot in the party index. Who did the newly appointed Chief Overseer command? She controlled 40,000 women from Hungary, France, and the Netherlands. The official party credentials and her prior operational service secured her immediate transfer to the Auschwitz-Birkenau complex. The facility consisted of 3 distinct zones to process different categories of inmates. Auschwitz I provided the primary administrative base for the regional command structure. Auschwitz II-Birkenau was the central extermination site. Auschwitz III Monowitz supplied slave labor for the adjacent IG Farben synthetic rubber plants. Birkenau contained the primary gas chambers. Over 1 million people died there. The vast majority of the victims were Jews. The entire Birkenau perimeter enclosed 175 hectares of isolated swampland. Within this massive infrastructure, she assumed the title of SS Oberaufseherin. She held the highest operational rank among all female personnel in the region. She reported directly to the camp commandant. She conducted daily perimeter inspections of the women's sector. Subordinate SS guards flanked her. They walked slowly past the long rows of identical wooden barracks. They verified the maximum holding capacity of each individual block. The heavy smell of coal smoke drifted continuously from the nearby crematoria chimneys. The logistical scale required precise administrative management. 40,000 prisoners occupied a single isolated sector. This exact human density equaled the combat manpower of 3 full Wehrmacht infantry divisions. The local conditions were deliberately designed to induce death through routine starvation, rapid disease transmission, and severe physical exhaustion. The population in her sector constantly shifted as new railway transports arrived at the selection ramp. The daily registry roster fluctuated between 30,000 and 40,000. Dr. Gisela Pearl stood rigidly in the inspection formation, tracking every movement of the senior overseer. Maintaining demographic control over the sector demanded direct administrative intervention at the primary railway platforms. Maria Mandl executed these daily selection procedures through immediate physical participation. A sharp gesture of her gloved hand indicated the required direction during the sorting phase. The administrative routine extended far beyond the initial arrival operations. Mandl continuously monitored the barracks perimeters. She walked along the assembled ranks with her dog during mandatory multi-hour roll calls in freezing temperatures. Exhausted inmates simply collapsed onto the frozen ground. Dr. Olga Lengel documented these exact operational procedures at the sorting ramp, noting the categorization methods applied to incoming transports. Schutzstaffel medical personnel divided the newly arrived populations according to their immediate labor viability. Mandl personally directed specific division protocols across the platform.
She deliberately isolated mothers from their children before routing the designated groups toward the execution facilities. Standard operational directives automatically classified children under 14 as unfit for labor deployment. Mandl systematized these routine multi-hour roll calls, laying the foundation for implementing even more sophisticated psychological control protocols. Why did a women's orchestra play classical music directly on the sorting railway ramp? Maria Mandl used marches to rhythmically synchronize the movement of thousands of arriving prisoners. She secured control at the basic operational level. Then, the Oberaufseherin initiated the creation of this musical unit. It turned the selection process into a timed logistical ritual. Around 40 female prisoners formed the full ensemble. French pianist Fania Fenelon sat at her instrument. She played classical marches mere meters away from those walking to their deaths. The upbeat rhythm executed a strict administrative purpose. Fast tempos forced the exhausted arrivals to move faster off the concrete platforms. The sharp sound of strings and brass instruments overrode the mechanical noise of arriving steam locomotives. Platform confusion decreased. Processing speed increased. Music masked the immediate reality of the destination. People naturally matched their walking pace to the heavy beat. The orchestra played continuously for hours during the arrival of massive transport trains. These prisoner musicians received indoor work assignments and marginally increased daily rations. But their physical survival required flawless musical execution. Mandl personally controlled the daily orchestra rehearsals. The Oberaufseherin paced between the wooden music stands, listened intently for missed notes, and physically punished the players for any technical mistakes. Fist shattered bone. The girl fell. Beyond the aesthetic orchestra facade lay immediate physical violence. Maria Mandl formalized physical punishment for zero-level logistical infractions. Birkenau distributed rations. Inmates ingested under 1,300 nutritional calories daily. Stealing bread constituted an unavoidable biological survival instinct. Camp administration classified this action as a severe capital violation. The targeted victim was a young Polish female prisoner. Her documented offense was a single piece of stolen bread. Mandl battered the girl until complete unconsciousness set in. Fellow Polish inmate Sarah Nomberg-Prisidic documented the exact chronological sequence. Guards locked doors. Incarcerated women stood inside pitch-black concrete Birkenau punishment cells. Water was withheld. Detained prisoners maintained upright positions for multiple consecutive days. But the Polish victim never reached those specific cells. SS guards dragged the unresponsive prisoner across the gravel. She died in the camp hospital hours later from massive internal injuries and severe blunt force trauma. Why did Dr. Gisela Perl perform underground abortions without medical supplies? Terminating the pregnancy remained the only method to rescue a mother from the gas chambers. Mandl's regulations extended beyond punishing food theft to control the biological condition of the prisoners. SS demographic policy categorized Jewish reproduction as a capital offense against the Reich. Mandl orchestrated the morning roll call. She paced the lines. She inspected the inmates. Discovering a pregnant woman triggered instant public humiliation. Guards pulled the victim from the ranks. Transport vehicles delivered her straight to the Zyklon B facilities. Perl violated the Hippocratic Oath by destroying the fetus. This calculated action spared the mother from Mandl's execution mandate. Metallic surgical instruments scraped in the dark. There was zero anesthesia. Perl arrived at Auschwitz in 1944. She operated secretly to circumvent the demographic protocol. Mandl authorized the eradication of every pregnant inmate. She ordered women to the execution facilities, even when their condition resulted directly from rape by SS guards. Dr. Joseph Mengele required specific human material for his research, and Maria Mandl secured these logistics. The elimination of the unborn expanded into the sorting of the surviving children. The Kaiser Wilhelm Institute funded these medical experiments, demanding a constant supply of subjects. SS physicians requisitioned prisoners with specific biological anomalies, prioritizing twins and individuals with dwarfism.
Mandl processed these requests through the chain of command. The requisition protocol required mandatory physical inspections inside the pediatric barracks. Mandl stood before the formed lines of inmates to execute the daily inventory process. She inspected the subjects individually against the medical criteria. She marked the printed forms. She held a wooden clipboard with printed sheets, dryly recording the identification numbers of the selected subjects. The deep drone of idling truck engines vibrated outside the thin wooden walls of the barrack. Guards loaded the requisitioned individuals directly onto the transport beds of the waiting trucks. Mandl met the daily quota. Transport vehicles departed the assembly area under the direct administrative supervision of the SS personnel. The documented manifests recorded the exact demographics of the outgoing human cargo. The extraction process removed the weakest targets from the general camp population. The engines roared. The documented age of the rejected subjects dispatched to the gas chambers was 5 or 6 years old. How did Mandl control 30,000 women with a minimal SS staff? She constructed a supervisory apparatus. She delegated terror. She appointed capos. Helena Citronova survived the Auschwitz camp. She was a Slovak Jewish prisoner. She documented the unpredictable operational cruelty. Mandl conducted surprise barrack inspections. Prisoners stood at attention. They waited for several hours. Mandl evaluated the living conditions. She scanned for minor imperfections. Anomalies triggered immediate collective penalties. One unevenly made bunk meant starvation. An entire barrack lost their daily food ration. This deprivation amplified internal friction. The psychological torture matched the physical violence. The capo hierarchy established strict control. German personnel remained scarce. Inmate functionaries filled the operational gap. Mandl selected specific prisoners for positions. She granted them marginal daily privileges. She gave them structural authority. Capos supervised the other prisoners. Capos beat inmates. Mandl kept distance. Delegated power fractured prisoner solidarity. Inmates monitored the wooden blocks. Internal tensions destroyed mutual trust. Trust vanished. Citronova witnessed unpredictable work detail selections. Mandl appeared suddenly during labor shifts. She extracted random targets. Capos executed the physical discipline. They dispatched targets to punishment blocks. The constant randomness generated perpetual terror. The hierarchy allowed the SS to manage tens of thousands of prisoners, utilizing a minimal German staff. The reason was absent. 400,000 Hungarian Jews were deported to Auschwitz within a 3-month window. The delegated hierarchy established through the prisoner capos underwent its primary logistical capacity test during the spring of 1944. By the summer of 1944, the crematoria operated at the upper limit of their designed engineering parameters. Deporting this massive demographic volume between May and July required the continuous arrival of transport trains both day and night. This constant influx of rail traffic loaded the existing processing infrastructure of the camp to 100% capacity. Following the German occupation of Hungary in March 1944, the transport operation accelerated toward maximum throughput. Auschwitz-Birkenau possessed 4 primary crematoria facilities, engineered specifically to incinerate approximately 4,400 corpses every 24 hours. Maria Mandl directed the administrative operations of the women's enclosure during this precise peak of synchronized extermination. She did not maintain a bureaucratic distance from the physical reality of the arrival ramps. Survivors extensively documented her physical presentation during the continuous mass intake procedures. She presented herself in a carefully tailored SS uniform, adhering to strict grooming regulations. Mandl monitored the selection lines while maintaining precise compliance with personal presentation directives. Her flawlessly clean SS uniform stood in sharp visual contrast against the operational exhaust of the adjacent gas chambers. Mandl trained new SS female overseers in strict camp protocols, while post-war investigators would later find kilograms of stolen gold hidden inside their private homes. Despite the maximum operational load on the camp infrastructure,
She continued standardizing the SS female personnel. Empathy meant treason. Guards showing hesitation faced immediate dismissal. Routine physical violence became the baseline metric for promotion. Behind this strict discipline, internal corruption thrived. Berlin officially mandated all confiscated prisoner assets for state funding. Mandl bypassed direct orders from headquarters. She sorted stolen rings, watches, and gold jewelry directly into personal stashes. Other senior officers adopted her exact methods. The camp administration amassed significant private wealth from the incoming transport manifests. The Eastern Front line collapsed by late 1944. The Red Army launched the Vistula-Oder offensive, pushing 2 million soldiers toward Poland. Soviet artillery echoed across the river. In early 1945, the SS command initiated the immediate evacuation of the camp complex. Maria Mandl waited inside a holding cell at the Montelupich Prison in Krakow, a former Gestapo facility. 1 month remained until she faced the gallows. This concrete enclosure became the terminal waypoint for the former administrative head of Birkenau. Polish judicial protocols permitted formal appeals, but investigators possessed an extensive volume of documentary evidence, prompting the tribunal to reject every legal motion. The court designated January 24, 1948 for the execution. During these weeks, the inmate demonstrated a rigid psychological block against external reality. The prison chaplain recorded her behavior, noting that Mandl positioned herself entirely as an innocent functionary executing administrative orders. She categorized her prosecution as an operational injustice and labeled herself the victim. The sharp sound of hammers echoed against courtyard walls as guards constructed a wooden execution scaffold in the freezing environment of Montelupich Prison. The physical preparation for her death provoked no visible shift in her defensive positioning. Official records indicate a total absence of factual acknowledgement regarding her documented actions. She maintained her operational narrative throughout the process, refusing to recognize the scale of fatalities authorized under her direct command. The historical transcript contains no recorded apology directed toward the survivors. She never admitted guilt. 7:24 in the morning. The execution protocol initiated at exactly 7 on January 24th. Guards unlocked the heavy cell door. Maria Mandl was ready. No breakfast, no final statements. The march across the stone courtyard began immediately. Steel cuffs secured her wrists tight behind her back. Armed guards flanked her sides. She walked steadily. The destination was the wooden gallows. The state executioner waited there. The mechanical procedure commenced. It was a precise sequence. Officials read the formal death warrant aloud. The listed crimes echoed across the cold yard. She stood quiet. No physical reaction. No final words. The executioner stepped forward. The physical mechanics of judicial hanging required exact geometric calculation. He positioned her center on the wooden trapdoor. A thick white cotton hood descended over her head. Darkness followed. The executioner secured the heavy hemp noose around her neck. He adjusted the large knot, placing it precisely behind her left ear. The procedure followed strict mathematical formulas. The executioner applied parameters derived from the standard British official table of drops. This engineering protocol dictated the exact rope length based entirely on the condemned prisoner's specific body weight. The formula ensured a precise kinetic impact. The calculated drop distance guaranteed a rapid fracture of the upper cervical vertebrae. His hand gripped the heavy metal release lever. At 7:24, he pulled it downward. The iron trapdoor mechanism unlatched. The wooden planks dropped open instantly. Mandl fell through the empty void. The heavy rope snapped tight with a sharp, loud crack. The sudden deceleration applied massive kinetic force. Cervical vertebrae fractured immediately. The mechanism performed exactly as designed. The body hung suspended in the cold winter air. The strict prison protocol demanded a mandatory medical waiting period. The executioner monitored his stopwatch. Minutes ticked by in the yard. Finally, the designated prison physician approached the suspended form. He checked for a carotid pulse. The doctor formally pronounced the cessation of biological functions.
The age recorded on the final medical death certificate was 36.
Where does a body go after execution? It goes into an unmarked grave without coordinates. Guards detached the corpse from the execution apparatus. They transferred the remains directly to the Montelupich Prison morgue. Medical personnel processed the body according to penal regulations. Standard post-war directives mandated anonymous burials for convicted Nazi war criminals across Europe. Allied and local authorities designed this strict protocol specifically to prevent future pilgrimage sites. The protocol banned monuments. Workers carved no headstones. The physical disappearance of the perpetrator starkly contrasted with the monumental scale of her crimes. Hundreds of thousands of women and children had already perished under her direct command. The vast majority of these victims died inside the Birkenau gas chambers. Others succumbed to calculated starvation and typhus outbreaks within the camp barracks. The execution lasted minutes. This swift mechanical termination felt entirely disproportionate to the massive volume of inflicted casualties. To enforce the anonymity, officials permanently sealed the exact geographic coordinates of her burial site. The administration classified the municipal cemetery records. Witnesses processed the procedural closure with profound emptiness. Some survivors demanded extended decades of hard labor instead of a rapid drop through a trapdoor. They argued that a brief asphyxiation could never balance the calculated starvation and daily selections on the platform. The judicial process delivered a biological end. It provided no resolution for the survivors. Her victims possessed no marked graves in Poland. Now, neither did she. The location remains permanently erased. Transport logs hit the tables. Yellowed pages rustled under the lights. The Supreme National Tribunal of Poland opened. November 1947. Krakow, 50 kilometers from Auschwitz. Paperwork formed the foundation. The Nuremberg trials set the precedent. They defined war crimes. Now, Poland synchronized the legal standard. They built a unified evidentiary matrix. The volume of evidence blocked denial. Witnesses arrived from across Europe. Dozens testified. They never met after liberation, yet their accounts matched perfectly. They described identical actions, specific selections on the ramp, exact punishments in the barracks. Then Gisela Perl took the stand. She flew from New York. She was a medical doctor. Perl provided hard clinical data. She detailed the pregnancy protocols. She explained the physical degradation. Her medical expertise destroyed the defense. Her testimony was precise. It was clinical. It dismantled any excuses. Next came the raw logistics. Heavy binders hit the wood. The camp transport manifests rustled loudly. Black ink proved the scale. Dates matched the train arrivals. Head counts matched the missing populations. The numbers were exact. The tribunal reviewed the paper trails. Thousands of names. Every signature tied her down. She commanded the women's sector. The administrative records confirmed her authority. She was no mere functionary. The paperwork trapped her completely. The survivors corroborated the files. Beatings recorded in the daily logs. Infractions cataloged in exact order. The prosecutors cross-checked the data. Dates matched. Alibis collapsed. Visual evidence arrived next. The prosecutors handed over the final proof. They presented the court with clear photographs taken directly on the selection platforms. The tribunal delivered the final verdict on December 22, 1947. Guilty on all charges. The sentence was death by hanging. How did the defense attempt to dismantle the prosecution? Through the standard argument of superior orders. The legal team presented the defendant as a minor element in the administration. They claimed survivor testimonies were heavily distorted by trauma and hatred. The lawyers suggested the wartime chaos created understandable administrative confusion. The post-war legal framework operated with strict rigidity. International military tribunals consistently rejected the concept of Befehlsnotstand, the defense of following directives, as a valid justification for participation in mass extermination. The defense argued she held a relatively low rank with limited operational control.
The material evidence exposed her direct, unprompted involvement in physical torture. She exceeded her required administrative duties. She murdered prisoners outside the scope of her official mandate. The tribunal dismantled the arguments with algorithmic precision. Judges evaluated the medical reports. They cross-referenced the selection protocols. Following military instructions offered no legal immunity for acts of deliberate cruelty. The physical logs prove she wielded immense authority over the facility. She personally directed hundreds of thousands to the underground execution sites. The legal precedent held commanders liable for individual actions exceeding basic instructions. The court recognized a sufficient level of administrative competence to comprehend the gravity of the actions.
The path to this tribunal commenced with a sudden apprehension within the American occupation zone during August 1945. Forged identification papers provided calculated anonymity, yet a database constructed by former inmates operated faster. The defendants systematically moved westward toward American-controlled sectors following the territorial collapse. By the summer of 1945, Germany contained over 7 million displaced persons, creating a colossal administrative overload. The escape strategy relied upon this demographic saturation to evade prosecution. This logistical failure materialized when authorities executed the arrest operation in Mühlhausen, Thuringia. Allied investigators deployed specialized protocols to penetrate the chaotic displacement. Former camp inmates, collaborating with intelligence units, provided direct visual confirmation. The identification process bypassed the fabricated paperwork. American military forces transferred the defendant to Polish authorities. What happens during an emergency camp dismantling? 60,000 prisoners march into the freezing cold. The need to escape arose after Birkenau's sudden evacuation. It happened in mid-January 1945. January in Poland, temperatures plummeted to -20 degrees Celsius. This freeze multiplied the mortality rate. Food supplies vanished. Weakened bodies failed rapidly. Survivors called it murder in slow motion. Columns walked through deep snow. The marches spanned hundreds of kilometers. Routes led toward Gross-Rosen and Ravensbrück. Starvation killed thousands. Guards executed anyone who stumbled. They beat helpers to death. Frozen mud crunched under heavy tires. Mandl watched them. She rode in a transport car. She enforced the strict marching pace. Pace never slowed. Women collapsed right outside her window. Gunshots echoed constantly. The camp infrastructure physically collapsed. The SS scrambled to hide everything. Officers destroyed records. Crematoria fires burned day and night. The guards fled. They abandoned the sick. Exactly 7,000 non-transportable prisoners. Soviet forces breached the perimeter on January 27th. They uncovered mountains of stolen belongings, exposing the logistical scale of these crimes to the entire world. The site fell. Gas chambers remained. In 1945, female violence appeared as an anomaly. Today, it classifies as a documented element of totalitarian engineering. The evidence abandoned at the Polish site allowed the tribunal to establish a macro-historical precedent. Maria Mandl voluntarily joined the SS apparatus. Between 1942 and 1945, she operated far beyond the capacity of a minor clerk. She held the status of Chief Overseer, maintaining direct control over every female guard within the facility perimeter. The broader Nazi concentration camp network integrated approximately 3,500 female wardens during this period. Mandl demonstrated how individual cruelty assimilated into state extermination protocols. She stood on the ramps and participated in medical selections, condemning incoming transports to immediate death. The vast majority of prisoners under her jurisdiction perished in the gas chambers or collapsed from deliberate starvation. Gender provided no exemption from the logistical execution of mass murder. Her tribunal proceedings dismantled the assumption that women acted only as passive observers of the Reich's policies. The recovered transport manifests proved that female personnel maintained the structural decisions required for extermination. Over 500,000 women and children passed through the female sector of Birkenau.